So, how does a country actually leave NATO? You'd think it's got to be this incredibly complicated process, right? Buried under mountains of international law and red tape. Well, the official rule is shockingly simple. But the reality? That's a whole different story. It's almost impossibly complex. So let's dive in and break it down. Believe it or not, this is it. This is the whole thing. A single sentence from the original 1949 treaty. This is the entire official rulebook for leaving the most powerful military alliance in history. There are no committees, no mandatory negotiations, just a formal notice and a one-year countdown. That's it. And that's the central mystery, isn't it? If it's really as easy as sending a letter, why has that exit door stayed completely shut for more than 75 years? Well, the answer is hidden in that massive gap between what the law says and what reality actually demands. Okay, first, let's really dig into that one deceptively simple legal rule. Because on paper, the whole process is just bureaucracy. It's a straightforward, almost transactional process between governments. The key legal term you need to know here is denunciation. It's a fancy way of saying the formal breakup. And here's a really interesting little detail. That breakup letter doesn't even go to NATO headquarters in Brussels. Nope, it goes directly to the U.S. State Department because America is the official record keeper or depository of the treaty. So here it is, the entire process, step by step. A country sends a formal diplomatic note. The U.S. then tells everyone else in the alliance, and then a 365-day clock starts ticking down. That one-year window is meant to be a kind of cooling-off period, but make no mistake, once that note is sent, the train has officially left the station. Now, let's bust a common myth right here. You might have heard that new members have to wait 20 years before they can even think about leaving. That's not true anymore. See, that rule was for the treaty itself to get established. That clock ran out way back in 1969. Today, a country like Sweden, which just joined, could theoretically start the exit process tomorrow if it wanted. So, the international part seems easy. But this is where the real chaos begins, inside the country itself. Before any letter can ever be sent to the United States, a massive, brutal political fight has to be won at home. And it all boils down to one simple question. Who even has the authority to send that letter? And the answer is, well, it's all over the map. In the United States, for instance, Congress just recently put a lock on it, blocking the president from acting alone. But you look across Europe and the other allies, and the systems are wildly different. It could be anything from a full vote in parliament to a simple stroke of a pen by a prime minister. The U.S. situation is a fascinating case study in just how intense this can get. In 2024, Congress actually passed a new law that creates what's essentially a NATO lock. It flat out forbids the president from pulling out on their own. It would now require a supermajority in the Senate or a whole new act of Congress. And get this. This is the real kicker. It also bans any federal funds from being used to plan or carry out a withdrawal. You literally can't pay someone to even type the letter. Now, most of the European allies follow a more, let's say, traditional path. In places like Germany or the UK, leaving an alliance as foundational as NATO would be a huge deal. It would require a full debate and a new law passed by their parliament. I mean, just think about the incredible legislative mess of Brexit. It would be something a lot like that. But then you have a completely different model. Take Turkey. In 2021, the president withdrew the country from a major international treaty using just a presidential decree. This was a treaty that Parliament had originally approved. So this set a really powerful precedent, and it suggests that, in theory, a similar unilateral move could be tried for NATO. Okay, so let's imagine a country actually does it. They somehow navigate the political minefield at home and win the fight. Now they face the next colossal challenge, trying to untangle 75 years of deep military, financial, and technological integration. It's less like flipping a switch and more like a very, very messy divorce. It's a Velcro effect. Pretty easy to stick together, but incredibly painful to rip apart. And to really get the scale of this, you just have to follow the money. This chart shows you how the costs are shared for NATO's common funded budgets. As you can see, the US and Germany are at the top, each kicking in almost 16%. Trying to unwind these massive, decades-long financial ties, it's a monumental task. And listen, it's not just about stopping future payments. Oh no. There is a huge breakup bill waiting for you. A country has to pay for any NATO-funded infrastructure on its territory that it wants to keep, like air bases or pipelines. It's on the hook for its share of any long-term contracts that were signed while it was a member. Think satellite programs that run for decades. And it has to cover the cost of firing all of its own citizens who work for NATO, and that includes their full severance and pension packages. But here's where the history of the alliance gets really interesting. The relationship isn't just a simple binary of being in or out. Over the years, countries have found this gray zone, a way to be sort of semi-detached without actually leaving completely. And the absolute classic example of this middle pack is, of course, France. Back in 1966, President Charles de Gaulle pulled France completely out of the integrated military command structure. So for the next 43 years, France was a political member. It was still covered by the Article 5 security guarantee, but its military did its own thing. It wasn't until 2009 that France finally came all the way back in. And other countries have used the threat of leaving as a powerful bargaining chip. Greece, for example, temporarily pulled its forces from NATO command in the 70s to protest what it saw as the alliance's inaction. And during the Cod Wars, Iceland repeatedly threatened to quit and kick the U.S. out of a critical airbase just to force NATO to step in and mediate its fishing disputes with the UK. It worked. All of this naturally raises the flip side of the question: if a country can choose to leave, can NATO turn around and choose to kick a problematic member out? And the answer to that is a clear, simple, and resounding no. There's literally no process for expulsion written into the North Atlantic Treaty. The only theoretical way would be to get every single other member to unanimously agree to suspend a country for violating the treaty's core principles. In an alliance of over 30 countries, well, getting that kind of unanimous vote is politically impossible. So let's play this all the way out. Let's imagine a country navigates the brutal internal politics and they agree to pay the massive divorce bill. What actually happens in the days, months, and years after they walk out that door for good? Now, this is probably the most critical consequence of all. That 1-year waiting period, it offers you no protection. The Article 5 guarantee, an attack on one is an attack on all, is built entirely on political trust. And the second a country sends that "I'm leaving" letter, that trust is shattered. To both your allies and your enemies, you are immediately on your own. The shield effectively vanishes on day one. And what if that country has second thoughts? What if they decide they've made a terrible mistake? Well, getting back in is nothing like the simple process of leaving. They would have to start over from square one, just like a brand new applicant. That means getting a unanimous invitation from all the members, going through a whole new readiness plan, and then waiting for every single member's parliament to vote to let you back in. Any one country could veto the whole thing. So that brings us right back to the core idea of this whole explainer. The process of leaving NATO is a huge study in contrasts. Legally, it's about as simple as it gets, but in the real world, it is a political and operational undertaking of absolutely colossal proportions. And all of this leaves us with one final big question for you to think about. In today's world, is that one-sentence exit clause a genuine escape hatch, a realistic policy option for a country? Or have 75 years of integration made leaving so impossibly costly and complex that it's really become the ultimate diplomatic bluff?